This user study is titled Death by Click, The Implications of Augmented Reality Monitoring. The title may seem a little aggressive, however, just bear with me and you will eventually see what I mean. So the photo up on your screens right now captures the final participant experiment, which took place in the University of Lethbridge's recital hall. It was a pretty lengthy day, so please excuse the mess. Um, so in social situations such as recording sessions in the studio, we consistently put ourselves under pressure of being musically accurate. So click tracks provide musicians with important cues like tempo information that assists them in getting a perfect, consistent performance, both in a live scenario and in overdubbing. Unfortunately, click tracks are susceptible to some design-based problems. Click tracks tend to sound unnatural as they're simply a functional sound that is meant to do one job. They're often designed to get our attention as they alert the ear with timing cues. And since they grab our attention when we slip up, they may have an ability to induce a sort of panic. I know that they do with me. I will actually falter even more when I fall out of time. It's kind of annoying. So clicks and cues are intrinsic to the recording of various genres of music, especially now with modern recording techniques. And click tracks and cues give us a wider opportunity for a perfect take. The positives can arguably outweigh the negatives, but can we still improve the overall quality? Is there a better way to deliver the cue? Instead of focusing on the timbre, volume, and width of the click, can we instead manipulate what is around the click? Can we manipulate everything but the click? So in Bauer et al.'s 2018 Audio Engineering Society, or AES convention paper, titled Musicians Binaural Headphone Monitoring for Studio Recording, they experimented with the use of binaural technology for monitoring world music, jazz, and free improvisation recording sessions. So binaural tech allows users to place sound objects, so in this case, the other musicians in the musical act, around a virtual head. The sound objects are then comb filtered, so like an EQ is applied to those sound inputs to provide the user with an accurate spatial image of where that object would be in real life. So regarding traditional headphone monitoring, their preliminary survey, the preliminary survey portion of their study highlights a lack of intimacy, sound quality, and a masking effect, causing some musicians to remove one of the two ear cups while performing. During the practice trials, it was discovered that although sometimes difficult to adapt to, binaural monitoring enhanced the listening comfort and musical performance, with one participant going so far to say that the binaural monitoring was a creative tool. They also mentioned that the perceived audio quality was improved as binaural monitoring is less susceptible to masking. Augmented reality to improve orchestra conductors' headphone monitoring is an AES convention paper published by Dmitry Sudoplatov and Amandine Pa. Their studies tested augmented reality monitoring with orchestra conductors through binaural rendering and head tracking. In a preliminary survey, conductors reported balance, level, click quality, acoustic inaccuracies when using traditional headphone monitors, and identical to the coping method mentioned above in the previous study. The majority of these surveyed conductors would remove one ear cup during the performance. Two production situations were tested: a film scoring concert rehearsal, and a symphonic jazz studio recording. Now, their study found that in the film scoring context, the room's acoustics were recreated accurately. There's better integration of the click and the orchestra, and a more pleasurable experience generally. The symphonic jazz ensemble experienced some challenges due to the drum leakage that was picked up by the microphone array above the conductor, because that's how this study was carried out. They had a 5 microphone array that was placed above the conductor's head to give that spatial image. So what I aimed to do in my study was to accurately deliver the performance space and its elements exactly as it looks to the artist in real time. What would be the easiest way to achieve such a thing? Easy. Well, if their ears are being blocked by headphones, then simply put another set of ears right on top of their existing ears. Well, you get the analogy. All right, so I took a pair of my old Sennheiser HD280 Pros, and I used them as my test mule. It seemed to be the most convenient choice as the HD280s are part of the headphone collection in the university studio. So using a knee pad foam, as you can see in this photo, and adhesive double-sided tape, I carved out a base as well as an inner ear shaped microphone baffle and affixed a pair of them to the headphones. I used DPA 4060s and a 4061 as the microphone feeds, leading me to make the mics entirely removable from my active headphones, which is what I call these. So next, I cut a slot for the mics to slide into the front and rear of, and the front and back of the ear, which was then gently secured with a twist tie at the bottom of the earlobe that you can see in the photo, and I call these twist ties the earrings. Next, I did some math, drilled some holes, stripped and cut a 4-channel XLR snake and screwed them into the junction box. I tested electrical resistance and continuity so I can make sure my work is semi-professional, and then I attached them to a belt. So in order to get fair and consistent levels with the active headphones, I tested them before each trial using a sine sweep and a makeshift isolation booth in the amp room of Studio One at the university. So here you can see the headphones actually assembled with the mics. This was taken during the first test on myself to fish out any kind of design problems and to see if they did in fact work as intended. Originally, I used twist ties to secure all of the wiring, which you can kind of see in those photos. I immediately realized that the mic cables would slip through due to the thin surface area of the tie. So I swapped all of the twist ties out for about $30 worth of Velcro, which was infinitely better and faster to replace the microphones. So as for the signal flow for the active headphones are essentially what makes them effective. So the mics affixed to the headphones receive ambient room noise audio. This audio feed is patched directly into the studio's binauralizer called the Clang. The Clang applies its filtering to the audio in real time to simulate the spatial sound objects around the head. Since the mics do all of the moving, there's no real-time adjustments for the Clang. It's just unnecessary as the audio feeds are changed simply by existing in real space on the person's head, on the artist's head. So basically the Clang can just apply a comb filter to each one of the 4 feeds, unchanged, and it can just sit back and relax. The output stereo audio feed of the Clang is patched directly into the studio's Avia monitoring system to reduce the latency or the delay. The click track or cue track is sent to the artist via the Clang's mono option, where sound objects can be placed in the center of the head, unfiltered and untouched by the unit. And then to get a measurement of various elements in the artist's headphone feed, the layout of their Clang feed is duplicated and recorded by the SSL as a line input. So participants were asked to have one composition or piece prepared, which could be played to a click track. They were then asked to provide 2 full control takes, followed by a take using the active headphones. The first control take was done using the cue outputs on the SSL duality console in Studio One, which was delivered to the artist via the Avia monitoring system. This is generally the way people monitor in most studio situations. The second control take used the stereo mode in the Clang. And then the click track or cue track, between all these tests, the click track or cue track was adjusted to the most comfortable level for the artist. Yeah, and that was done prior to each take. And the headphone feed of each control take was printed for analysis. So this was done with both of the control takes as well as with the active headphone take. So once all takes were completed, the artist filled out a questionnaire regarding their experience with the active headphones. So I'm running out of time here. So there were 4 scenarios tested in total: singer-songwriter, solo piano, live drums and amplified guitar, and piano and live electronics, which were played through speakers in the recital hall. So there was a questionnaire that was made available to the artists right after the experiment. So these were the pros that they had mentioned. I have, because it's a user study, um, it's not very strict in the way I did everything. I kind of just put in some of the more frequent phrases. Felt more in the moment, forgot they were wearing headphones, creative experience. There was an interesting one. Interaction with live tape was enhanced, facilitated more sensitive performance. Um, it was a good list. And then for the cons, I listed every con that they actually had mentioned. So the first one was mics were sensitive, which makes sense. They colored the perception of the audio, was not able to perform with the vocal mics. That was actually something that I completely overlooked. Unusual belt pack. To be honest, the belt pack is extremely uncomfortable. Putting them on and off was difficult. Still fell out of time, but not drastically. Not sure if they internalized the click or if the click track level was too low. Did not notice any drastic difference in the recordings. And the click seemed quiet at times because the volume of the instruments in the room was not in the artist's control. So just as an example of how I actually measured. This kind of goes back with the title of the study, Death by Click. So this shows the final artist that I recorded, who's actually Ian. He presented earlier. So I broke it down for his was a bit different. So I broke his down based on the dynamic range between the etudes. He played 3 etudes in total. So you can see that I just took an average from the I normalized every single feed to 35.1 LUFS, deep decibels. If you've never heard that term before, they're not exactly the same, but they're pretty close. So I took I normalized everything to negative 35.1, and then I took the percentage of difference between the mono Avium control and the active headphones. So the softest sound, which is just the click, against the loudest sample point. So there was an 11% increase when using the active headphones for Etude 1, a 1% increase for Etude 2, and there was actually a negative 6% or a 6% decrease in Etude 3. So now for the fun part, I analyzed all of this across all of the samples. I had 5 separate five people that I could analyze, and these were the results that I got. Whoops, there we go. So you can see that there are some pretty drastic numbers in regards to dynamic range. The drummer is probably partially deaf, just because when you have a huge dynamic range difference like this, that probably means that the click track was just pinned in their ear, which is actually what I get to show you. So what I did was I took about 30 to 40 seconds of each one of these individuals. So the first one being the piano and live electronics, solo piano, guitarist from the duo, the singer-songwriter, and then the drummer from the duo. I put the drummer last because it's actually hilarious. So there's an A-B order. So for each one of these situations, I start off with the Avium, then we go to the active headphones, back to the Avium, and then end on the active headphones, and then move on to the next artist. And I was gonna put when I actually changed it, but I actually didn't need to. It's extremely obvious, and you'll get a good laugh out of this. So here we go. Whoops, hold on.
my blue-eyed girl? Where on earth is she?
When we're apart, I miss her, so I'm sorry we didn't meet. I'm sorry we didn't meet.
Well, I'll never go back to New Orleans, won't go to San Francisco.
All right. So those were all their direct headphone feeds. All I did was normalize them. Actually, for the very final one, I normalized it, and then I actually had to bring the click down in the Avium because it was blaringly loud. There was no panning. I didn't do any kind of expanding or nothing. That's literally what they were hearing in their headphones at the time. Um, so conclusions and future develop. I know I'm over time. Conclusions and future developments. So the active headphones, they created an accurate and sometimes enhanced spatial image. Headphones themselves are not more intrusive than traditional headphones. However, the belt pack ergonomics should be improved. They facilitated a more creative experience, drastic improvement in sound quality, easy to readjust any time falters. SPL of the mirrored signal coming from the clang could be measured, and the click or a cue track could be adjusted automatically, reducing the chances of the click being buried by the drastic dynamics, which are completely out of the artist's control in the performance space. So just to finish off, because I think it's such a funny result, for the drummer, there was a 97% increase in dynamic range in the active headphones, and I thought I would close off with a quote by the drummer. So the mix is then usually all click with a splash of other elements to let me know where I am in the song. Then I just get the bleed of the drums through the headphones to tell me if what I'm playing sounds decent. With the AH, or the active headphones, I heard myself for the first time in a long time, and I think it was very useful. Doing this experiment made me realize how loud the click track actually is in my ears. There's no way that's good for me. Thank you.
Okay, great talk. Yeah, really sick, as they say. So I would give the mic to the drummer. What do you have to say?
Yeah, I just got to say that these results were like super eye-opening. My name's Carter, by the way, for those of you that don't actually know. Yeah, it's just hearing back exactly what I was hearing in my headphones. I didn't even realize that I had the drums basically muted. Like they were basically not even in there. I didn't realize that was all bleed. And then, yeah, having the click just overpowering. It was, yeah, like I'm definitely ordering one of those like vibrating metronomes or like doing something because there's no way I'm going to be able to like hear anything in a few years. So, and I know I'm not the only one either. Like even if you look at like the guitarist or like even the singer songwriter, like their results aren't as drastic, but it's still like bad enough that it's worrisome. So yeah, I think it was super eye opening for me, anyways.
Yeah, the only results that weren't super significant was just the final one where it took place in the recital hall with the pianist and the live electronics. The difference in dynamic range for everyone else was above 30%, with the drummer being the highest. The guitarist was also pretty high at 74%. The singer-songwriter had a 67% increase in dynamic range with the AH, and then the solo pianist had a 31% increase in dynamic range.
So would you say that the guitarist is deaf too?
That's pretty bad too, yeah.
So just, Leonard, just so that I understand this correctly, what you're talking about there is like the level that you had to push the click in order for the musician to be able to hear it while they were recording. Like, is that 97% difference between the active headphones and non-active? Do I understand that right, or?
Yeah, so what I did was I ran all of the sample points and I ran the click itself. There was always a little chunk where it was just the click track. So I ran that through a metering plugin, and then I matched uh, the long-term value of just the click, and then I took sample points from the exact because it's on a grid, right? I took sample points from the exact same space and places in the piece, but on the different monitoring scenarios, and I actually measured how much room there is between, like how much of a volume difference there is between the click and the other items. So like how I'm looking at this is the click for it to actually at least make an impact, it probably needs to be pinned pretty loud because that's all like it was the majority of what people were getting. So when you have something that has a huge dynamic range, like even like with a range of like 30% increase in dynamic range, you're not getting constantly bombarded with that like high pressure audio. You're at least giving your ears a bit of a break. But with the click track, especially for that poor drummer, it's just constantly there's probably a click track imprint in your ear.
Yeah, and so I mean, when you've got the active headphones on, you just, if my understanding is right, you just don't need to keep the click level so loud because you've got a much better idea of what else is going on in the music. Is that kind of what?
Exactly. Yeah. That's what I'm figuring. That seemed to be the comments that I received on the thing. There was one. Well, actually, there was a couple where it was if the if the artist lost a click track, then they could just move their head and then binauralize everything else except for the click, and then they could find it again. So it didn't really need to be very loud. It could be relatively low in the mix.
Yeah, I mean, I can even just tell it without using the specialty headphones, just listening at home here, that like that would have been. I haven't done a lot of recording, but like as a drummer, that would have been just absolutely amazing to be able to hear yourself when you're recording is unbelievable. You better patent this before somebody steals this idea. You're gonna make $1 million, but
That's what my brother said.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it has been done, huh? But I'm not sure it has been patented. So it has been done for a master thesis in France.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, Valentine quoted it, but I told you early on that I could not share it with you because it's in French.
Oh, fair. Yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
and it was kind of a weird test. I think you did something more advanced in a way. But just a little quick, maybe Ian wants to share something.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. In my my personal experience, because I think I'm like, my piece is one of the few where the click track was constantly changing, and the click track was an integral part of the piece that I was playing. It was interesting because I had never experienced the click track in that way before, and performing with the headphones, the active headphones, was a really, really, really cool experience because I could hear myself interacting with the live electronics in a way that I don't think I've been able to before. So yeah, it was a great like musical experience as well. Very cool.
Glad to hear. Yeah, you did really good.
Yeah,
Good
that's
performance.
great. Good. I mean, and Leonard, I mean, we know you're the guitarist, so do you want to share your own experience with it? Like,
It was I was actually the comment about how there was one of the cons was you had no control over the level of instruments in there. I actually made that comment because I would lose the click track sometimes, but it didn't feel like I didn't panic when I lost it. It felt a lot smoother to get back. There was like a human element to it. I don't know. It's weird because it's like my own study, but it's just yeah, the lack of panic definitely was surprising because usually like I lose a click track and then like I don't know, I freak out.
Yeah, if I can say one more thing about that, sorry to jump in, but I found the same thing when I lost the click track. I was not worried about it at all. It almost felt like I was doing a natural kind of sense of rubato. Whereas opposed to when the click track is being like hammered into your ear, you kind of feel like a servant to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's, yeah. Well, that's awesome.